Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with another episode of Weighing In. We are brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. GT and I are flying solo today without Mark, who is on the train doing real work, doing his responsibilities. GT, how's life, my guy?
Oh, just busy as all get out, busy as all can be.
Well, we're going to talk a lot about the US Open and the whole procedure of what's going on. So I was able to get, and I want to thank Gary Abbott for this because I waited till the last minute and it's my fault, but he was able to send me this document, which is super helpful. So GT, let's work backwards. The Worlds are in Serbia in September, correct?
Yep.
The qualifier for that, the last qualifier is Final X, which is in Stillwater and in New York City. They're split, and those are in June, correct?
Yes.
And then the qualifier to get into Final X are the World Team Trials, which are in May in Coralville/Iowa City. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then the last opportunity to get into the World Team Trials is the US Open, which is next weekend in Vegas. Have I laid all that out fairly well?
Yeah, that's the largest way to qualify for the World Team Trials.
Right. So I spoke to Gary, and again, thanks, G. We appreciate you big time. There is a list of athletes that have already qualified. There's 74 Greco wrestlers, 79 women's wrestlers, 74 men's freestyle wrestlers. 2 athletes have qualified in both styles. So the qualifiers determined based on the World Team Trials procedures, which are outlined here. And there's a list. If people want this stuff, they can just DM the show and we'll send you the link. So the way this works, just to people give an idea, like at men, and we'll just kind of fly through these, but talk a little bit about them. So we'll start with men's freestyle because that's what's on the document. Gilman is sitting in Final X. Vito, Tomasello, Richards, and Tortis have already qualified based on the Olympic trials and the Bill Farrell placement. And then Suriano, Glory, RBY, and DeSanto are qualified based on their placement at the NCAAs. At 61 kgs, Fix is sitting in Final X, Carter Young, Gross, Graf. So I guess before I go any further, GT, the other thing is it's the top 7, I believe, from the US Open is the last way to get in. Is that your understanding of it?
It's either top 7 or top 5. Okay, can't remember.
Okay. Let me see if I have this over here. I believe it's 7, but you might be right. So point being, if a person places at the US Open, they can steal a spot. So for example, if Vito Ruja were to wrestle in the US Open and take 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 5th, because we know it's top 5, let's say it was top 5, they're only going to take 4 now. They're not going to take the 6th place person. So you'll see some people, like the example Gary Abbott gave me was Kayla Miracle. That Kayla Miracle is obviously qualified, and we'll get down to the women's list and go through that. But if she wrestles in the Open and places, she steals a spot. The US Open will be pretty influential on the seeding of the World Team Trials, correct?
Yep.
So, all right. So Vito, Tomasello, Richards, Suriano. We're not going to just read through all these names, but just some kind of big names here. So Seth Gross is qualified, but he looks like he's moving up to 65. Keyshawn Clark. It's funny they have him listed as 61. There's no way that guy makes 134 pounds.
Yeah.
So you would probably know this, GT. So let's say Jordan Oliver doesn't want to go 65. Does he have to wrestle to qualify for 70, or can he just go 70 since he was the Olympic trials champion?
I believe he has to qualify at that weight. So I believe he would have to go to the U.S. Open and compete at 70 kg.
Okay. And that's also because he didn't medal. Because, like, if he medaled at the Olympics, then he could move up or down a weight and be sitting in the semis of the World Team Trials. So,
Correct.
So J.O. McKenna, I mean, just look at this weight. I mean, before we even get into who else is trying to qualify, let's talk about this weight. How loaded is this weight, man?
Good heavens. It's 65 kg. I mean, there's even tons of guys that aren't even listed there. That's just the gauntlet of people that are just currently on the sheet.
Yeah. Well, I talked to somebody the other day that pointed out Ridge Lovett's probably going to go down to 41 next year. That he couldn't go 41 because of Chad Red, but then he's probably going to go down to 41 next year. And we'll probably start the year as the preseason #1, which is fascinating. So
crazy.
70, your boy James Green, who is retiring unless they make 70 an Olympic weight. This is another weight that's absolutely loaded, right?
Yeah. And there's tons of guys that are not on that list that are monsters as well.
Right. Well, we're going to get to the list of people. Flo put together an awesome list of the people that are signed up for the Open. So 74, Dake, Nolf. I mean, O'Toole just won NCAA's Junior World champion, not just medalist. Shane Griffith, JB sits. Do you think we'll see Carter Starace?
Yes.
Do you think we'll see Makai Lewis?
Yes.
Do you think we'll see Hayden Hiley?
Yeah.
That makes this weight really fun, doesn't it, man? Because, like, Dieringer's kind of the guy, like sort of, the one behind JB, but these young bucks coming up, man. Makai was a junior world champ. Starace, 2 NCAA titles, beat Makai in overtime. I mean, this weight feels like it's in pretty good hands whenever the King decides to retire, right?
Yeah. I mean, and then, of course, there's more guys I mean, there's tons of pros that are still on the scene that could be at this weight as well. And, maybe they're going 86 or they're staying at 79. There's tons of guys that can still make this run. But right there's kind of a who's of collegiate wrestling on that page.
I know, right? So, all right, 86, DT sitting. So this is an interesting way because Bo Nichols doing more MMA, not really wrestling. Zahid, the rumor I heard is if he doesn't make the team, is going to go wrestle for Mexico like his brother. The adventures of Pat Downey continue. And then you got these young guys who are really good, Brooks and Keckheisen, who really, I mean, Brooks, especially junior world champion. I mean, Penn State's got pretty good dudes at this weight, the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, they got a really good group.
So, okay, so I'm looking at this, and unless we go to 92 and I miss it, Nate Jackson still has to qualify. Is that correct?
Yep.
So that's what we're going to go to this other list in a second, but Jaden Sitting, Moore, Hidley, Foster, Elam, Reenan, Max Dean, Warner, Buchanan, Snyder Sitting, Gadsden, Mock, Aiello, Rao, and then Gable Sitting, which we talked about last week. We got that correct. Quiz, Paris, Nelson, Zilmer, Dom, Cassiope, Saran Francisco, Colton Schultz. And, Schultz can go both styles. I mean, that's pretty impressive in itself. So, women's, Hildy is sitting. Vicky Anthony, I just saw she was in a jiu-jitsu tournament. Do you know if she's still planning on competing or if she's kind of making the move over to MMA?
I know that she just wrestled in the bout at the ballpark, so I don't know what her plan is. But she did step back onto the wrestling mat for that event. So I wouldn't be surprised to see her, maybe in Iowa City, because she is training really hard. But I haven't spoke to Vicky yet.
Gotcha. Okay. And this is where, because women's wrestling doesn't get the same college publicity, you see some of these names here. that maybe are not quite as familiar to people. I'm guessing that we might see, like I see Life and Iowa Wesleyan. I'm guessing we might see somebody from Grandview as we scroll through here. So Jakara is in at 53, but not sitting. You know, Rana, Dom, Catherine Shy, kind of the big names there. 55, Jenna sits. Gallegos, Alicia Hauk. I mean, these are all the names that I remember from doing the play-by-play at the Olympic trials. These women's weights, and you know these, GT, really well. It's one of the main reasons you're on the show is your knowledge of our Olympic-style wrestling. These weights are really deep, right?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to women's wrestling, I think that the collegiate girls are becoming, it's very similar to the men's collegiate. They're coming out ready to wrestle a little bit earlier. Like the girls that have been on the juniors and cadet teams are extremely talented. And, you know, then they're going off to college and kind of making their continual run. But I mean, if you look at any of these girls, they would have all, you know, kind of been more or less, you know, at Fargo, you know, junior, you know, champs and All-Americans going up through the system. So, you know, paying attention to these names, like, you know, you've been able to seen a lot of these girls prior, but now like with their affiliate programs with you know, either spread out to the different colleges. So you're maybe not seeing them in the traditional singlet that you might be able to see them in. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, these names are very recognizable for anybody that's been continuing to watch, you know, the women's side of things.
Probably one of the most recognizable names, Helen.
Mm-hmm.
And then right now that weight's super thin, you know, not a lot of people there. Maya Nelson. I'm just kind of scrolling through some of these names of people. Kayla Miracle, we just talked about her. So this is, you know, again, when you see Kayla Miracle, Macy Kilty, Jennifer Page, Mallory Velty, Gracie Figueroa, and Karina Blades, and there she is, Grandview, right? You pronounce her name Schlebach?
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a great weight. And, you know, this is also really good for, like, especially the non-Division I programs, that these young ladies are qualifying and helping their universities and themselves really get more publicity and grow the sport, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Forrest, Bruntel, Boyd, Grody, Rachel Waters, Mensa Stock, Kennedy Blades, and USA Wrestling is putting out these posts on the daily that as these athletes accept their final X bid. But I think like the only one that's really would be in doubt would be Gable, correct? I mean, I can't imagine anybody not accepting their bid, right?
Yeah. Unless someone gets hurt or something crazy.
Right. Okay. And then, so we go through here. This is the end of the women. Greco, Mallory, Kuntz, Duffield, sort of the big names. Ildar, Mango. I think Mango may be either retiring or close to it. Sam Jones, Stepanian, Gregerson, Ree Ratchell, Sancho Coleman, Benji Peak, Peyton Omanya, Jesse Thoki, Pat Smith. And then, so this is interesting too, because they let the veteran guys actually, if they want to be in here, wrestle. So like Steve Horton's a guy that actually wrestled for my dad and is, you know, actually older than me, but he technically could wrestle on this. Jesse Porter. So yeah, there's Kamal. I was going to say, like, you know, this is where the weight he's at. Then there's your guy, Provisor, Spencer Woods, Stefanowitz, Rao, Spencer Woods, Giangelo sitting, Braxton Amos. And, you know, Braxton Amos is a guy that had a good college season, but really excels in the Olympic style wrestling. And I think probably qualified in both styles. I'd have to go back and scroll through. And then Adam Kuhn, Colton Scholes, Jacob Mitchell, a lot of the, you know, the usual suspects there. So now if we stop sharing and we go over here and we share again, this is the list of people. This is GT's favorite episode. He hasn't had to look at me the whole time. So these are the list of the people that are currently signed up. Flo's doing a great job. Give them credit here of updating this. Obviously, it's on their site, but, you know, at least not having to scroll through brackets and everything. So let's spend a few minutes on these, GT. So like I looked at this in prep and the names, like as I'm going through, and then I'll scroll back up and like 57, Latona, Diacomahalis, Matt Ramos, Camacho, Aiden Reeves, it looks like is with you guys, Joey Prado. Are those kind of the names that stick out to you, or who also should we be pointing out to people here?
I also think another guy to reference would be Matt Ramos.
Yeah.
Once again, I think at 57, there's tons of talent there. I'm surprised that Latona is at 57, just because I think he's ginormous.
And he's going up to 33. That's been announced.
Yeah. So once again, I think it's, with all of these guys in there, this is a very deep weight for us in the U.S. So, those are kind of the highlights, I would say.
Ramos is a former age group world medalist. Greg D is obviously Yanni's younger brother. And like you said, Latona is really big for the weight, but, could cause some problems. So, all right, 61, the names that pop out to me. Well, yeah, Gabe Tagg, Klebo, Tyler Graff. So Tyler Graff is signed up and doesn't need to be. Shelton Mack, Nico, Foz, Jesse Mendez, Wyatt Henson. So one of the things that strikes me here, GT, is how much weight? Is it a 2 kilo allowance? Is it the day before? Do you know the weigh-in stuff on this? Because some of these dudes look like they're cutting a lot of weight.
I'm pretty sure it's either. I couldn't tell you. I haven't looked at the weigh-in procedure, but I do know that they'll have to make it twice if they make both days.
Yeah. Well, at least Sean Foz isn't trying to make 125 anymore.
Right.
And then Josh Kramer, Seth Gross. So Gross is signed up here at 61. Peter Hammer, don't know who that guy is, but great name. Daniel DeShazer. I mean, this Gabe Townsell. Your boy B-Ride is in here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, who am I missing here? Or it's like, some of these guys can make some noise, right?
Yeah, you got a lot of talent, and this is a lot deeper weight than 57 as far as total participants.
Yeah.
Once again, there's a lot of guys like DeShazer. He's a pro. He's been on the scene for a while. Townsell, age group, world team member. Gross, of course. All the other guys that we've kind of already mentioned. There's a lot of collegiate guys, a lot of guys that have been on the scene for a while. Mac, Nico Megaludis, Graf, of course. World team member. It's and kind of the new guys coming up. Like with the Jesse Mendez. So kind of a blend.
I think Josh Kramer 1 year was like the Pan Am runner-up, like the alternate to Shelton Mack, because I think I watched that match in Iowa. So, yeah, a lot of names are 65. Brock Zackerl sticks out. Kyle Shoup. Hannah's from Campbell. Colton McChrystal. Julian Tagg. Kanan Storr. Dean Heil. Luke Pletcher. Yaya. Evan Henderson. My guy, Josh Saunders. Lugo. Kendrick Maple. We're going to have to come back to that. Ian Parker. Zach Zemer. Colo. Good Lord. Okay. So you know the story behind Kendrick Maple wrestling, right?
Nope. Share for the audience.
Keegan O'Toole made a bet with Maple that if he won Junior Worlds, Maple had to wrestle in the U.S. Open. So
love that.
Yeah. And part of it was they were saying he's so good, like still so good. And, Maple had a great career, but he kind of had a weird career where he was like at different weights and, was hurt, I think, his senior year and was up. And, like he was between 41 and 49, but was so good when he was at his peak. Be interesting to see how he does. But my gosh, in terms of name brand recognition, GT, Parker, Maple, all these names I just said, and it's hard to scroll. Let me see if I can make the font smaller so you can see more at a time. But yeah, there we go. Just bag full of hammers here, right?
Yeah, another guy also is Cole Matthews from Pitt. So you got a whole bunch of guys that were All-Americans this year.
Yeah, I missed him, yeah.
but yeah, this is all sorts of talent in this bracket.
Yeah, I mean, and you got young guys like Saunders who made a bunch of world teams and got hurt at Scuffle this year, so sat out the second half of the year. I mean, then you got, the Dean Hiles and Colos of the world. Then you got Maple, who's coaching. I mean, some of these matchups are going to be fascinating. So all right, I'm going to go back to my font for bigger eyes. But all right, 70. Will Lewan, Tyler Berger, Pantaleo, Andonian. So Pantaleo has not qualified because he got hurt last year, correct? Is that right, GT?
Yeah, he hurt his ribs at trials.
Right, so he had to default out, so he didn't place, and therefore, because he didn't place, he has to wrestle in the open to get into this thing.
Yep.
Is it fair to say, and I guess this is like an all-encompassing statement, but I won't make it extreme, but he probably has as good as chance to make our senior, make our world team as anybody that isn't currently already in the world team trials or Final X. Is that, am I missing somebody, or is that a pretty fair statement?
I mean, as of the guys that we listed off previously that weren't allocated already, that were in the world team trials, that would have to then qualify through this process, I think Pantaleo has beaten, former world team members, and was at one point in time, I believe, ranked number 1 in the world.
He was on Match Chat when that happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he has, probably the most name recognition and senior level prowess that has not qualified for the world team trials that would potentially could be the world team member, going from US Open all the way through the whole process. He's got a really good shot.
Gotcha. Will Lewan, the master of the 1 second escape, Tyler Berger, Bryce Andonian, Ed Scott, J.O. is wrestling, Teamer's wrestling, Headley's wrestling, Mahler's wrestling, Verclearen, Blockus, Jake Keating, Austin Gomez is wrestling up at 70. Ashnold is wrestling. Sam Sasso, that threw me off. Sammy Sasso's wrestling. Jeez, dude, how deep is 70?
Then you got Luca Wick. You got all sorts of guys. And the list just keeps going. Crazy.
74, your guy, Tommy Gant, Jacob Wright, Cam Amin, Joey LaValle, Josh Shields, Cerniglia, Van Brill, Ogun Sanya. I mean, that weight's good. It's 70 jumps off this page to me is like just insanely deep, right?
Yeah, 65 and 74 so far have been kind of like pretty deep, pretty scary, lots of talent, lots of big names, lots of really intriguing matchups where you're like seeing guys from different generations of national tournaments competing against each other.
That's a great way to say it. Like a Josh Saunders and a Maple could wrestle, and they're like 14 years apart.
Be like, hey, I saw you at camp when you were 7.
I was your counselor in college when you were in kindergarten camp.
Yep, those things happen.
79, Hayden Hastings, Plott, Marsteller, Imar, Ringer, McFadden, Wick, Scatza, Lujan, Isaiah White, Zay is back. Casey Randalls, Chenzo, Muhammad McBride. There's like a gigantic human being for 174 pounds.
Yep.
I mean, this is another way. So again, like Ringer hasn't actually qualified, right? Because he was hurt at the Olympic trials.
Well, I think, Ringer focused on the world team during that process.
Right.
So, Alex is, at 79. And then once again, JB took his, he accepted his berth at 79, even after, I believe it was in Turkey, he was commenting that he wanted to go back to 74. I think 79 is a great weight for Daringer. I think that's the best weight for him. I think it's difficult for him to make 74, almost impossible. And then 86, 86 is a different ball game entirely globally.
Yeah, I talked to Ringer Wednesday night at Nationals at that event, and I know him fairly well, and obviously you know him really well. And he's getting married this summer too. But I mean, like, he's not real tall. And 86, you're talking about obviously 7 kilos, which is like 15.4 pounds. I mean, people get the numbers and they kind of think kilos or pounds, and it's not. So it's 2.2x. So anyway, some interesting names there. Lujan, probably one of the guys that got hosed the worst. The COVID year, number 1 seeded guy that had never All-American. 86, Mark Hall, Trent Hidley, Nick Reenan, Owen Webster, Gavin Kane, Marcus Coleman, your guy Kendrick Jones. There's Nate Jackson, so he's got to be in here. So, like, this is an interesting thing, right? It's like Nate has to place here, correct?
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay. 92, Mike Mock, TJ Dudley, Trumbull, Batista, Cam Caffey. So this is where, for example, like a Rocky Elam, having been a junior world champ, he gets to bypass this tournament. And that's, that saves a lot of wear and tear on your body if you're trying to make world teams. So
yep.
97, a yellow. That's interesting. He's going up, because 92 is only 204. So 97 is, yeah, 92 is 204. So 97, yellow is up above that. Joe Rao, not a super deep weight. Heavyweight, Laird, Lance, Gas Tank, White, Walls, Luis Fernandez, a couple of Missouri guys there, Thomas and your boy Dom, Zilmer, Jordan Wood, Sam Schuyler, Ormdorf. Pretty good weight for pretty good for 275, huh?
Yeah.
So the women's weights, you tell me, like, some of these names that are listed here, like, for example, we already said they've qualified, so they're just getting in extra matches. Is that the basic gist of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think also a lot of the athletes did not participate, let's say, at Bill Farrell. So this is a good opportunity to compete prior to World Team Trials, which is in a month from basically the U.S. Open or thereabouts. So some of these people have not been able to do world tours or go overseas. So this is a great opportunity to get matches in prior to that. So that's kind of where a lot of these people would want to get, maybe some knock off somebody or, just get matches in.
Yeah, I mean, it also, I guess, like, a lot, the periodization is a phrase I'm hearing from coaches a lot now. So training cycles and things like that. And, probably with the fact that people don't have as many events to train for, if you're coaching and you don't want somebody to get stale and you want them to get matches, then U.S. Open is obviously a huge opportunity. And usually if you're at a pretty good club or RTC, they're already sending members. So it's, that's kind of helpful. 53, Rana. A lot of these names I don't think are as household names. 55, Jakara. So Jakara seems like she does a lot better at 55, which is unfortunate because that's the non-Olympic weight, but she's just a muscular, big human being for 53, correct?
Yeah. 55 is a more natural weight for her to compete at. It's just the Olympic weights being in between 53 and 57.
Yeah. So just Jersey Estrada, I know her from her dad wrestled for us. Nani Justice, XMP, Kayla Miracle's listed here like we talked about. So I think this is just, overall, I'm going to stop the share here, but this stuff, as you guys can see, is all out on Flow or at USA Wrestling's website. But GT, let's talk about, I talked about this for years when I was on the Track Wrestling podcast. You get to go all over the world, and you've obviously earned that right, and you're a very astute observer of wrestling. I know you still wrestle with your guys. I know you're still a high-level coach, and obviously you're with Nike. If you could take all those hats off for the next 3 minutes of this conversation, if you're a wrestling fan, if you're just somebody who loves great wrestling, how great are these 5 days in Vegas?
It's if you have a wrestling fix, that like there's a couple of different tournaments within the world that really is like one of the tournaments that you would take a new person to. Like if you want to expose people to really good wrestling and have access to extreme talent at all ages, you know, like the US Open is probably one of those events where I would take somebody that has never been or is just a new fan to freestyle and Greco-Roman or women's wrestling. There's just so much going on. There's age group categories, there's senior opens. The energy in the building is just really good. Of course, World Championships is probably another event that if you ever get a chance to go to a World Championships at the senior level or even the junior level, please try to attend one of those at some point in time. Yeah, the NCAA Division I is another great one. Once again, more folk style, but the energy, you can't replicate it. But the US Open, with everything that goes on at South Point, is a great experience.
I was struck by it. I think you've been going to it, even though I'm older, and I think you've been going to it longer than me. And I the first time I went was like maybe 5-6 years ago, and I was in a coaching capacity. And, you know, people are texting you, and like, what happened at this match? Like, I don't know. Like, what happened at this match? Like, I don't know. And they're like, how can you not know? I'm like, there's 37 matches going on right now. Like, you know, and I don't know that that's an exaggeration. I think there might literally be more than that.
There is so much going on there that, and of course, like if it's a fast match and it's on the other side of the arena and then you don't see it and then everyone's like oohing and ahhing, it's like, well, how'd you miss that throw? It's like, well, I'll see it on Twitter here shortly.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, there's just so much going on. And then of course, like watching matches, and if you're coaching for like 2 or 3 matches in a row, then you're like down in the arena and then you're back up on the other side and then you have another guy going off over here. There's just wrestling's everywhere.
Yeah. So for people to kind of comprehend it, you got to go through the hotel, go through the casino, go through some elevators, and it's kind of a speakeasy thing if you don't know where you're going. Like, and then you end up at the end, and it's where they hold a rodeo. But off to the right is this big open space, and I think there's like 18 or 22 mats there, and that's where they do the age group stuff. And we didn't even get into that. That flow list lists all the U15 signups, the U17 signups, all this stuff. And those tournaments are the qualifiers. Like, you know, like there's no final X at those ages, you know? So like, you're going to see some super elite wrestlers. You know, I think like a lot of times people like watching local MMA cards because like, oh, that guy's going to be the next Israel Adesanya. That guy's going to be the next Conor McGregor, you know, whoever. And so like, if you kind of want to watch who's going to be the next guy or girl, you know, at that young age, it's unbelievable, man. Like, you know, I mean, I've had a chance to sit in some great corners and just watch some great matches, like literally while we were on deck or in the hole, you know, and then it's like any tournament, as it tapers down, you kind of, the people that didn't do as well are obviously eliminated. And then all the matches at the end are just freaking insanely high quality. You know, but if you go past that first room, then it's the top level, and it's almost like Carver Hawkeye, where you go down onto the floor instead of it being at that level. But before you do that, off to the left is another 6 or 8 mats where they run front sides in the beginning, and then eventually it's all back sides up there. And then you go down on the floor, and there's like another 16 mats, I think, at least 12. I mean, it's crazy, right?
Mm-hmm. It's a crazy setup, but you can go walk around the entire thing and be mat side for almost all of it.
And it's not that expensive. Like the tickets for the US Open for these days are cheaper than an NCAA ticket. it's cheaper to stay in Las Vegas than it is to stay in Detroit or Tulsa or Kansas City or St. Louis when we host it, because it's not as well attended by just wrestling fans, you know? And I think that's like, I said this to Willie Saylor a couple of years ago. I'm like, Bryce Meredith is wrestling Jaden Ironman in the round of 16 and like 9 people are watching it. Like, this is an NCAA, if it's an NCAA semifinal, 19,000 people are watching it, you know, plus all the people at home, you know, on ESPN2 or whatever it is for the semis. So if you're I don't want to use the word, I'll say this, and hopefully a wrestling junkie, like if you love wrestling, okay, I know junkie has a negative connotation, but if you love wrestling, if you almost have like wrestling ADD, where like, I can't get enough of it, this tournament is unbelievable. And I said this for years when I was not on the USA Wrestling platform, you know, when we were at track. It's like, it's unbelievable, man. And you get to see so much great wrestling. And obviously your downtime, Vegas is like one of the better places to spend your life, you know, as opposed to Detroit, Michigan in March, you know? So, I mean, I get no commission or anything on this, but I've been seeing for years that people want to go watch amazing wrestling that actually matters. You know, like we're setting world team members at the age group weights, and at the senior ones, these people are getting into the world team trials, which is going to feed into our team. Like a Pantaleo, you could be watching this guy wrestle here and then watch him 6 months later, 5 months later in Serbia as our team member. Like, that's not a huge reach. So obviously you're wearing multiple hats there. I'm sure you'll be doing coaching for, you know, some of your club kids. I don't call them kids, young men and women, obviously doing Nike duty and, you know, shaking hands and making sure everybody's happy because of your responsibilities and accountabilities. But, you know, I think even somebody like you during the semis and finals, you just get to stand mat side or get a good seat and just really soak it all in, right?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, when those things, when the thing slows down and the production slows down, to be able to then focus on specific matches or 2 matches at a time, and it's down in the arena, you know, it becomes really fun. And I think, to your point, also the accessibility to, you know, with our sport, we have a very, very approachable, you know, professional rank. You know, you get to stand next to Terry Brands, Tom Brands, K.O. Sanderson, Kevin Jackson, Kenny Monday, Zeke Jones,
Sergey Beloglazov.
Yeah, Sergey Beloglazov, some of the best wrestlers to ever wrestle. You know, in collegiately too, like Branch and Tom Ryan and, you know, Chris Pendleton and, you know, all of these guys that are basically out there in the world that you have some accessibility to them and you can bump into them on the floor. And I think that's what makes the US Open so incredible is that, think about all of the great wrestlers that walk into the South Point Hotel and Casino for 3 days. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is where some of the best wrestling minds in the world are watching and coaching, and you can just, you know, kind of take it all in.
That's a fantastic point, GT, because it's so different from NCAAs, right? Like NCAAs, these guys go into a different tunnel and they're on the floor. I mean, I'm on the floor and these guys don't want to talk to me because they're getting their guys ready, you know, and it's their money tournament. This is how people earn bonuses. This is how people keep their jobs. This is how people lose their jobs. I mean, you know, nobody wants to say that out loud, but that's the truth. You know, like if Iowa or Penn State took 27 3 years in a row, there'd be a coaching change. I mean, that's just reality. So it's intense, but again, it's not the collegiate season. People are a little more relaxed. They're in Vegas, makes them a little more relaxed. And like you said, you can just be standing next to somebody, you know, like Nate Carr Sr., you know, like that guy was an Olympic team member, Olympic medalist, 3-time NCAA champ, you know, like a Kenny Monday, like those kind of people are just there. You're like 6 feet away. You know, I mean, it's pretty cool. And I mean, I understand like this is coming out, recording this on the 21st. It'll probably come out on the 22nd. I don't know about you, but I fly into Vegas on the 26th. I'm guessing you get there that day or even a day earlier with all your responsibilities. So I know people don't have a lot of time, but they should put this on their calendar. Like this is and obviously if you can't go watch it on Flow, I mean, watch these matches, and then that's crazy too, because you got all the different mats and screens, and that's where you kind of got to have the notifications ping. That's the first time I learned about that, about not missing your own guys or girls matches you're coaching, because that can happen really easily too, especially if you have people in multiple brackets, which I'm sure like you guys will have. You'll have some age group people, some senior level people. Yeah. So I can't say enough about the US Open, just how thoroughly enjoyable it is. And then I'm sure for you, because Nike has a huge presence in the collegiate scene, but also a huge presence in the freestyle Greco women's freestyle season, and then it's great. Like, as much as you and I get to talk, it's nice to see people like you in person. We get to go visit with Randy and do some fun things like that. I mean, it's a pretty awesome weekend. And like the wrestling might be, it's like the wrestling is the reason why people get together, but it is really unbelievable. But all the side benefits of it, the relationships, the networking, literally just getting to like I remember standing next to Sergey Beloglazov and listening to him talk about wrestling for 30 minutes. And I'm like, how much should I Venmo you for what you just taught me? Like I'm clearly smarter than I was before, and also realize how far I have to go. So we will say it again.
Totally agree, my friend.
Yeah. So I do not know, guys, if we will record next week, because GT and I will definitely be in Vegas on Thursday. I know that, which we normally record. And so we may record from Vegas, but I would say it's probably more likely that we don't, just because of everybody's schedule. And, we probably have to do it from hotel rooms instead of just doing it together and, getting multiple cameras. But if we don't talk to you guys next week, the week after, we will definitely sum up what happened. And then we're knee deep in the season, right? Like now it's just a couple weeks from World Team Trials and all that other stuff. So anything else for the people before we sign off?
No, just tune in as best you can to the event. Watch on all of the platforms, and looking forward to a really cool US Open next week.
Yes. And I will see you probably in about a week or so. And I think eventually we both might have a copper mug in hand.
Absolutely, brother.
For GT and for Mark, I'm David. Thank you guys for watching and listening.